All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Jake Dunlap Show. We are very excited that you joined us. If you haven't tuned in, this is the show where we talk to celebrities, thought, and industry leaders to really discover their journey to success. I am super excited that you're joining us. This show is like no other. I can promise you that. You might laugh, you might cry, but you will definitely leave inspired and gain a whole new level of insight into those people that you follow, love, and admire. All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Jake Dunlap Show. We've got a fun story today. I'm actually really excited for it. We were chopping it up a little bit before we started getting into it, so I'm looking forward to it. So this gentleman, from moving to the U.S. at a very young age to dropping out of college to start a rock band, which is really exciting. This week's guest has had quite the journey to being the expert digital transformation and website storyteller he is today. He's driven significant digital brand experience initiatives with companies, some really small companies like Google, Cisco, Intel, Citrix. There's literally I had a list. It was like 500. So this guy is out there, making it happen as a digital strategy expert, entrepreneur, and CEO of WebEnertia. Please help me in welcoming Mr. Steve Ohanians. Thank you, Steve, for joining us.
Thanks, Jake. You're really good with this intro stuff.
that is the one thing that I know that we nail. Like, out of all the things, I know we crushed the intro, Well, it's so interesting, man. One of the things when I started the podcast was I'm on a bunch of podcasts too, but it's always kind of surprising just they've done no research. It's like I feel like it allows me to have a much richer conversation when I know who I'm talking to, even if we don't have a chance to catch up.
You have some context around what you're going to talk about.
Exactly. Yeah. So if anyone out there doing a podcast, stop being lazy, Exactly. Actually do a little bit of research, get to know somebody. So, all right, if this is your first time tuning in, what we're focused on is telling the stories of amazing entrepreneurs, celebrities, athletes. We actually have some Olympians that are currently competing right now that we've interviewed. And really, the stories that help to shape us, the things that happened to us early on that shape the leader or the human that we become. And so that's why I'm really excited for this conversation, Steve. And, I want to kind of jump right in. So we were talking about it a little before. So for you, born in Iran, kind of spent the early part, Iran, Armenia, et cetera. So maybe just talk to me a little bit about, kind of the first formative years, growing up in the Middle East. And then when your family, came over to California, and, talk maybe a little bit about that part of the journey.
Yeah. So my background nationality is Armenian, and I feel like every Armenian story, I don't know if you've had any Armenian friends or anything like that, but every story starts with, it's a little bit of a downer, but the genocide in 1915, where Turkish Ottoman Empire killed 1.5 million Armenians surrounding that whole Middle East territory. So a lot of Armenians got dispersed.
Right.
In fact, don't quote me on this, but right now I think there's only around 2 or 3 million Armenians that actually live in Armenia. There's about 7 or 9 million dispersed in the diaspora. So because of all that stuff that happened. So my parents' families ended up in Iran, out of all places, and that's where they met. That's where I was born. Grew up there, and I think in 1986, my parents decided to move to the United States. A couple of reasons. One was there's the Iran-Iraq War, and they just wanted to give their kids, myself, my siblings, a better life and better opportunity. And during that time in Iran, you can just say, hey, I'm going to migrate to the United States.
Right. They're not like, oh, yeah, no problem. Here you go.
Yeah, go ahead. Go right ahead. Things weren't rosy then. Things aren't rosy now. So my family had to pretend that we're going on vacation to Italy, right? So, which meant, we're not bringing anything along with us except for some travel money, which the government had to approve how much you could take for a 2-week vacation to Italy. So we essentially left with everything behind. And once we got to Italy, we applied for refugee status to come to the United States. And so I got to the United States in 1986, and I was 12 years old.
Wow. Do you have, what were some of your memories then? I know that, I've kind of heard you or seen you talk about your dad being your hero. What are some of the lessons you have and, some memories you have? Because again, it's just probably for a lot of people listening, it's just such a different, first, 6 to 12 years. What are some of the kind of key moments that stand out? What were your parents doing at the time as well?
Yeah, so my dad had to give up a very high-ranking, high-position job as something like a senior VP or manager at an oil refinery in Iran. So he ran the whole plant there, and he had to basically give that up. And when he came to the U.S., he studied to get a plumbing's contractor's license for new construction. I wanted to ask him, why plumbing? He's like, I was working with pipes in the refinery. They were just kind of bigger, right? So anyway, but he studied to get his contractor's license to do that for new construction, barely speaking the language, and he supported our whole family. And that was really my first-hand experience with someone being self-employed. And he used to take me to work with him. And, there's ton of things that I learned. A few plumbing tricks, So if you need your garbage disposer changed or water heater looked at, I'm your guy.
What about how to fix a toilet that won't stop running? My wife, we have one of those in our house, and my wife is going insane.
Well, I could probably take a stab at it, but your wife would probably do what my wife does, which is yell at me and say, "Get
exactly." Yeah, that's what she did. Exactly. Well, okay, so that's when your dad moves over, and you start to get to experience that. You see him; he becomes really an entrepreneur, right? He was kind of doing his own path.
Self-employed. Taught me a lot of things, whether I knew it or not. Just going to work with them. One that just being self-employed was okay, right? And this we're talking about late '80s, early '90s.
And where are you at and geographically at this time?
So when we first came to the United States, we went to Los Angeles because we had some family there that we could stay with, and then eventually we moved to Silicon Valley, San Jose.
Right. And so did I hear you correct? So did it take 6 years for you all to get the visa to get over?
Okay. No. We got it actually right away.
Okay, great.
So that was pretty quick. And then we came to LA, and then we eventually came to San Jose. And like I say, he used to take me to work, and then the stuff that I would see, just being an entrepreneur or being self-employed was actually an okay thing because he was supporting his family, barely speaking the language. So I kind of took that and just thought about I could really be successful at anything if I'm dedicated and I work hard at it. And I would also unconsciously just look at the way he would deal with his employees and clients with respect and just the way he, handled situations. So, that was my whole first experience with starting a business or thinking about an entrepreneur and that being okay.
Yeah. What age is this now? This is how old are you at this point?
This is during high school, junior high and high school.
Yeah.
So,
I've got a 7-year-old son, and I think about this. It's interesting from all the episodes we've done. I think about these stories. I'm like, gosh, I have got to be a better role model. Like he's watching everything. I think I'm a decent role model, but it's just, gosh, they watch everything. And so, and what kind of student were you? Like, what were you into, in those years? Just, again, you have an opportunity to watch your dad. He's building his business, and you're getting an opportunity to observe that. And what were you into? What kind of student were you?
So I was a pretty good student, especially early on. I think maybe my senior year I might have slacked off a little bit in high school, but for the most part, I was a pretty good student. There's a few things that I really liked or I was good at. So one, I was really good at math, physics, science, and I really enjoyed figuring out how things work and getting that analytical approach to solving problems. I really like that. And at the same time, I really love the arts and music as well. I'm drawing and doodling. And I taught myself how to play the guitar and the piano, not very well, but enough where I could write music for myself and just have a creative outlet. So that was me in high school. And then when I got to college in 93, it felt like I had to choose one over the other. Like you're going Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science, right? So that's when I picked Aerospace Engineering out of all things, and went to school at USC in LA. And in my head, I was going to get into working on flight simulators, like where I could take all the stuff that I learned with physics and math and combine it with some visuals and do something cool with it, like, look into flight simulations. But it was just way too much math.
I mean, look, it's aerospace engineering, right? It's not like, I mean, don't get me wrong, all the different mechanical, et cetera, are all difficult, but I feel like aerospace is like probably like one of the more challenging ones.
It was some of the coolest things I learned. It was just, at some point I was bored out of my mind. I was like, it was just too much, and it didn't give me that creative outlet. So much to my parents' delight, I dropped out of college and started a rock band.
I love this. So I want to get into this really quick. So you come down. I mean, look, you had to have good. I mean, you went to USC, right? So I mean, you've got good grades. You're on this path. I know a lot of the stories. When you migrate, the parents in particular are like, you have to get into college. You have to go to college, et cetera. And so, how did your parents take it when you're like, you know what, Mom? I know you thought I was going to be an aerospace engineer, but now I'm going to be, because this is like 90. What year are we at? Like 94, 95.
This is like 94,
95. Because there was the huge like LA rock scene with like the hair metal that had just happened, right? Like Motley Crue, Poison. That was like mid 80s.
Hair metal stuff was over. There's a lot of really cool up and coming bands that ended up being big. System of Down.
Of course.
With that. So we actually did some stuff with them, but so no, it wasn't a fun conversation. In fact, I might have not told them for a couple of months.
Class is good. Out. Class is good. It's fine.
Yeah. Class is good. Class is fine. Mom and Dad, sorry. If you guys listen to this. But
what did they say? How'd they respond?
So, they weren't happy, but my parents have always been supportive. I mean, at the end of the day, one thing they said is, we brought you here so you can follow your dreams. So, if this is what you want to do, we don't like it, but go try it out. Right? So I got together with a few of my really good friends. We wrote some music, performed in some of those LA clubs. Had the best time of my life. It was probably, to this day, there's nothing like, I don't know if you play music or you do any of that, but there's nothing like having 4 people get together and try to create music, and when that minute when everything clicks, it's like magical. It's like the biggest high.
That's awesome. So, what kind of music were you guys playing?
It was like rock. I don't know. That was grunge.
I was going to say, grunge is starting to kind
of heavier grunge rock type thing.
What was the name of the band?
Substance.
All right. Well, are there YouTube videos that exist?
There are no YouTube videos. Unless, actually, there might.
All right, we will look. If there is a YouTube video, before, Tyler on our team will find it.
This was before YouTube, so
maybe someone uploaded it. Like a battle of the bands.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. If there's anything out there,
now you're like, oh shit, I need to go. Let me go look. All right. Did you have like long hair too? Was it like?
Not then, but I did grow my hair out.
Got it. All right. Okay, so you do the band thing for a little bit. And then, so again, for, just thinking about this, we're in the mid 90s, right? So this is, this is the beginning of, not the beginning of the internet, right? And so what was it for you? You started to see these other opportunities in web and, Netscape, for everyone out there, shout out to Netscape. If y'all remember Netscape, a lot of you probably will not. I definitely do. Web crawler was another one that comes to mind. What how did you get into that? How do you go from aerospace engineer to, because then you did go back to school, right? You ended up going to San Jose State.
I actually, I'll get to that in a little bit. This was the 90s and the web was really coming on so strong, right? Like you mentioned Netscape, Internet Explorer, browser were just becoming better at displaying web content. There was like standards being written for CSS and HTML. There's tools for creating web with this Macromedia Flash. That was getting huge at that time. So for me, that concept of the web and these interconnected pages that anyone can contribute to, and where you can design plus code to put something up on the web was super exciting for me. Like I became obsessed. I was designing and building websites any chance I had. I was doing it day and night. I was doing them for friends' bands. I was doing them for family, friends.
This is while you're playing in the band still, though.
While I still have the band, yeah. I'm doing it for businesses I work for. I'm doing it for businesses that never even asked me to do a website for them. I would just do it and send it to them, see what they thought. For me, I think it was that the web or doing websites was the perfect marriage of art and science, right? Like the whole thing I was struggling with in school, where I can use art and design to conceptualize something and then use engineering and code to build it. So I was obsessed. That's all I was doing.
I love it. So, okay. So again, like you've got some like random roles here. What made you decide to go back to school? You know, you're already starting to do the work, right? You're already starting to, acquire the skill set to, be successful. What was the, I guess, reasoning to, go back to school and, get your degree in digital media and, computer science?
Part of it was, if I'm being honest with myself, was just make sure my parents were happy. You feel as an immigrant's oldest son, you feel a certain kind of responsibility to make sure, what they sacrificed didn't go to nothing, right? So part of it was that. And then I really did want to hone in on my skills in graphic design and computer science. Those two things that were going to help me become better at doing what I really found out I love to do. So that's, I went back to San Jose State and studied graphic design and computer science. And while I was in school, I decided to start WebEnertia with my business partner, who's coincidentally my best friend growing up, and that's a whole other story.
Yeah, we definitely will.
But yeah, so I started the agency while I was still in school.
Doing that same stuff, right? Like finding people who needed websites and...
Yeah, but, doing it more seriously. So actually putting up our own website, starting to think about marketing it and, doing SEO and, to the level where it was back then. And, it wasn't Google, it was Alta Vista and all these other search engines that we'd use for searches. But, and starting to get some clients. We eventually got some startups that somehow trusted us to do their website.
You're in the right place for it, right? But the interesting part, right? Like you start this in '99, right? So you're right before. Then there's the big bust, right? That happened.
Then there's a big bust.
What was that like for you? Again, as you started, and I guess real quick, I want to back up. What was it for you that I guess you're kind of already doing your thing that, I guess, and obviously you're seeing your dad being, doing his thing. Was there ever a time where you're like, oh, I'm going to go work and get a job and go work in a company and be a good soldier? Like, was there ever a time, or were you kind of always like, nah, man, this is like, I'm going to do my own thing?
No, it was always like, I'm going to do my own thing. And that whole accidental entrepreneurship was kind of all because of that, right? So I started my agency because I really loved doing the work I was doing. I love designing and building websites. I didn't start it because I wanted to scale and grow a business. Right? For me, entrepreneurship was almost a byproduct of me wanting to do the work that I wanted to do, and seeing how it made a difference for companies. Where what's funny is I feel like today every other person I meet is an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, no, 100%.
And
CEO of a one-person
right?
company.
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense, right? Like it's more affordable. There's an accessibility to technology and mentorship, and it makes it easier. And it's everyone's side hustle or main hustle or whatever it is. But when I started to do this in '99, it was still a little taboo, right? To start your own business, you want to have a good job. Like my girlfriend's mom would say, "What? He doesn't have a real job."
He's not at IBM or some other tech company in the Valley.
Yeah, so, but I feel like that tabooness of being self-employed is gone pretty much now. And I think for better, that's great. But what I see nowadays is folks that their motivation is being an entrepreneur. Right?
I don't know what I want to do or what my passion is, but I'm going to do it for myself.
Yeah. It's a total millennial thing or whatever it is. Like,
you said, it's like, are you really the master of your own universe when you don't know what universe you want to be in? Are you really going deep? If you even think about what you did, right? You built a skill set. You went deep. You were still working, like you said, these other jobs and in a band, etc. And then you found that thing and you're like, oh, so, I feel the exact same way in my consultancy, right? I was a multiple time VP of sales and success and operations. And after doing it a few times, like, man, and sales, I'm like, I love the art and the science of sales and building teams, et cetera. Like, but man, why am I doing this for other people? But I built like an expertise. And again, like you said, when you align it around what you love and your passion, then that's like what you've got to do, as opposed to just going and taking a course on a ClickFunnels and, trying to hustle to make, $5-10 grand a month.
Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
Either. Like if your motivation is to be an entrepreneur and you get your gratification by your mission or whatever that is, that's great. It just wasn't my story.
Yeah, absolutely.
The gratification was the actual work. Like my motivation was my work and the help I was able to provide with these organizations. The entrepreneurship was the byproduct. Like I had to do it.
Yeah.
The work that I wanted.
And let's
to do.
talk about that. So what were the first, again, so the crash happens, then we, kind of things come back. Then we've got the, kind of the second blip in like 2008, 7. So what were those first kind of 10 years, the 2000s like for you all as you're, kind of going down this endeavor?
The first crash didn't really affect us much because we were just too small. We had our core initial clients and we were just plugging away. And one thing with us is we've been very thoughtful around hiring. That's been something that's really been important for me personally. We take, or I myself take these people are almost handing their careers to me.
They are, yeah.
Right? And I take that responsibility really seriously. So we've never been a type of organization where we're busy, we hire a ton of people, and we figure out, okay, now we're not busy, we just lost account X, Y, and Z, and you guys are all gone now. We've just never been that way. So we've always had a very thoughtful approach to hiring. It's always been about the right person for a long-term view. So we had a very slow but steady growth. So neither one of those crashes really affected us that much. I mean, we had to do some shuffling, of course, here and there. But as a company, we've consistently grown since we started our company.
And for those listening, like what are the things, I have the same philosophy. And I think, sometimes I'm sure you feel this and, you kind of learn as a leader, you care too much, right? You want it for someone more than they want it for themselves. And, because I've always felt that way and I think for anyone out there listening to this, like if you're in leadership and you don't feel this way, you probably shouldn't be in leadership. It's like when I talk to people like, yeah, like I might want to be in leadership or, just do something like, and then, okay, then you shouldn't be in leadership. It's like, you kind of know what it is, right? That you're taking these people and that you are responsible for their growth. And I think that core tenet of leadership is one that a lot of people don't either understand or fully appreciate, that sense of responsibility that great leaders feel for their people to help them to become whatever it is that they want to be.
There's a great book I read called Leaders Eat Last.
Yeah, that's Simon Sinek, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of talks about the same thing. But yeah, the one thing I like when we were pitching on jobs and when we're going to or responding to RFPs, and if I have a chance to have a conversation and we're going against other agencies, one thing I always say is, you might want to check out their Glassdoor and see how those people actually treat their employees. That might be a good indication of how they might treat you as a client, right? So I take it very seriously. People are our lifeblood, right? And we want to make sure that they're happy, they have a growth plan. And agency work is hard work,
for sure.
Right? You're not clocking in and clocking out. So we put a lot of emphasis on culture and education and all those things.
And how did you decide to get into to make kind of B2B in particular your thing? Like, what was it that, because again, I think a lot of people, again, I'm in the B2B world as well too, business to business sales to translate. And, I guess it's kind of natural, from a sales, and not necessarily, there's a lot of B2C sellers too, but how did you make that call? Hey, we're going to be about empowering B2B brands, and maybe back then it was like, hey, maybe a little bit less, but what was that focus for you? How did you decide on that area to hone in on?
Good question. So around 6 or 7 years ago, I want to say our sales got a little stagnant. as an agency, and we took a really hard look at ourselves and tried to figure out what makes us unique as an agency. And there's a few differentiators that we saw. So one of it was we're located in Silicon Valley with some of the most amazing B2B brands and a ton of investment in that space, right in our backyard. We're already working with a lot of them and solving and really understanding the B2B nuance and challenges. And we'd collected years of data around B2B engagement, lead generation, brand experience that we could actually make benchmarks out of. So that's when we decided to focus our services on B2B and specifically B2B technology companies instead of the broader market. And having that niche allowed our whole organization to focus. I mean, just our conversations were more focused, are more strategic, and we immediately saw like a 50% increase in revenue the first year that we did that.
Isn't that crazy? I hope a lot of people hear that, because I know it's the same for my business. The nature of being in consulting and similar to, as an agency, it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, we could do that. And we've consistently seen when we eliminate things, even if they were generating hundreds of thousands or maybe $1 million, and we kill it, it's like all of a sudden, it just like you said, it just like frees it up. So any entrepreneur or anyone listening out there, I know it's scary, but listen to Steve's story and to my story.
Yeah. Figure out, I think like the biggest thing I learned is figure out your niche, really what makes you special, and then say no to the wrong opportunities, right?
Yeah.
In like, you're eventually saying right to the right ones.
That's right. Then you have the bandwidth to say right to the right ones. Right. You're not going to create a house of cards that you're ever spread so thin or, burnt out from working with the wrong types of customers,
Yeah, and that's the other thing is it actually helped us be more picky with the customers that we want to partner with. It just put us at a different level, and we've been riding that wave ever since. I love
it. And then what is Liquid? What that's like something that you got into like mid 2010s. What was Liquid?
Oh, they're a local branding agency that for a while WebEnertia was literally their digital arm. So I was helping them. Essentially, I was their digital strategist in their conversations.
Right. And then last year you got named to Forbes Agency Council. Tell me about that a little bit. Well, how has that experience been so far?
I've never been one of those CEOs that's always on podcasts and going on, doing a lot of thought leadership. And this year we started to put a focus on that, and I actually enjoy it a lot, just sharing some of my experiences and writing more about everything that I know. And something about writing is actually really nice. It starts, you're like, shit, I knew these things that I didn't even remember. And once you write it down, and like it's now forever there, and that you can use it in conversations as well too. So something about that process was really nice for me. So I love
that. I love that. Yeah, and I had, for me, it's like 2018. And I don't know. I mean, I think you probably, actually, I almost guarantee it was similar for you where, I think I grew up in the Midwest and, you're kind of taught, well, you don't talk about yourself, you don't be too flashy. And I can imagine, with your, your parents and I'm sure it was, some of that as well too. But I think what happens is then you start to realize like, yeah, hey, I do know things, and I'm not bragging or, doing anything wrong by talking about things that I know. And I think as a CEO, sometimes there's that pressure to kind of put all the shine to the business and just like don't talk about things or always wrap it in the guise of the business. And so I think it's exciting that you're kind of getting out and doing more of this. And so I want to kind of transition and talk a little bit about, again, because you're in the B2B world and we are on the sales side, right? So we work with, hundreds of organizations every year, as they engage with you and partner with marketing. And maybe like kind of a last topic I want to dive into is really just digital trends in B2B, and what are some of the trends that you're excited about? What are some of the trends that you're seeing across your customer base? For us, we're talking a lot about remove friction. How do we create a click to buy-ish type experience for our customers? Because today, it's just like, gosh, can you imagine having to talk to someone to buy an airline ticket today? Or like, you can't like search for your own house. I was on Zillow last night. I live in Austin now, and looking at ranches. I'm like, oh man, I want to get a ranch, get some land. And I'm like, our whole life now is, self-guided, let me do the research. And then I'm coming with just a level of intent that just most B2B sales organizations are just not ready for. Like, look, you can just save it, kid. Like, I've already done the research. I've compared you to 4 people. I actually already got a budget approval, and we try to qualify people or put up forms, etc. And so, I can go on, and we can chop it up a little bit. But what are some of the things on the marketing side that you're, excited about, or trends that if you're in, a B2B company, people should be aware of?
I mean, I can look at it a couple of ways. One is the way we look at B2B marketing or B2B website experiences in general is, I feel like a lot of the times B2B brands forget that at the end of the day, you're dealing with people, not some arbitrary logo or name or company. So these organizations go on and on and on about the product and the features and functional solutions and how great their offerings are, and never really focus on building relationships with people. Those are the ones that are making a decision to use your product or make a decision to buy it, right? So as a part of what we do, and I don't know if that's a friction or not, but we focus on creating and building those relationships with the different buyer personas for these B2B organizations using their brand and their website, where you're literally talking about that individual's pain point and you're generating trust using an authentic voice, right? Like that's kind of what we do to help these organizations with their web experiences. As far as
how do they do that, before you go to the next, like how are you seeing like best in class B2B companies doing that, right? In a way that, again, doesn't come on, because I feel like B2B companies just can't help themselves with like, and then there's a hook at the end, or like, and the solution is Oracle Cloud, right? Like it always comes off. There's always that kind of inauthentic hook at the end, right? That's like, yeah, there's value add here for sure, but like it's a story that you're definitely telling to lead me to this. Not that there's anything like 100% wrong with that, but how are brands doing that authentically? Like you said, building a relationship in an authentic way versus a more, call it salesy type way.
So actually 2 years ago, we started creating this annual report where we look at the Fortune 500 B2B
That's right.
companies.
Yeah, I had that in here.
And we evaluate them for exactly those things, like authenticity, narrative, best practices of user experience. There's a ton of criteria that we look at them at. And, there's some companies that just don't give a shit, right? They don't care. Like,
I don't think they know. I think a lot of the companies, they just don't know any better, right? It's like
they might not know any better, or they might not care, but like the ones that actually use some of those best practices, there's actually data that we collect that it increases engagement quite a bit, right? Just people spending more time on your site, interacting more with your content, all that stuff you're spending all this time on. So if you actually do create that authentic voice and do think about narratives and user flows and user experiences, then it improves engagement. It's in the data. So and we publish that every day, so once a year. So
and who are some of those brands? Like, is there like somebody comes to mind and like an example of something that you're doing to make it real tactical for people?
Trying to remember. I think NetApp was one of the companies that scored really high for us. Salesforce does a pretty good job. Those are sites that you want to check out, and you'll see like the brand experience feels authentic. They're
a lot of voice of customer, like as you're talking about it, it's a lot of voice of customer on those.
Voice of customers, and that's what I'm talking about. Really talking about pains and really them talking about their successes instead of the company saying, well, I was on this Gartner report. And,
you were on the Magic Quadrant. Like, here's the thing. Everybody knows that you pay to get in the Magic Quadrant. Like, we all know that you literally are paying Gartner to have them cover you and be in these reports. Like, I just feel like, how is this still a big thing? Like, I just can't comprehend. Like, it's all pay to play. There's no, like you said, no authenticity there. it's lost its.
It's a little bit of marketers trying to make themselves feel better.
Well, and hey, man, there's nothing wrong with making money. I mean, they're a big company, right? Yeah. Okay. I like that. So again, talking about that, and it's interesting. A friend of mine, he's a sales leader. He's managed teams of hundreds, and he was talking about another idea on the future of sales. What if you go to your best customers and you say, "Look, I'll pay you $100, and you run the demo, like for 30 minutes. You just tell them what it is. I'll ask the questions, and you can just tell them about your experience, and you'll get a discount, or we can compensate you." But it does feel like that voice of the customer in today's day and age. I mean, look, we've been being trained to pay attention to reviews for a long time now. In B2B is more important than ever, because it didn't used to be. There wasn't that much information available, right, as there is now, like G2 and some of these other sites that allow you to really compare and look and go deep and understand capabilities. So I think that's a key piece, and maybe a piggyback question on that too is, how are you seeing sales and marketing partner, and how has that evolved? That's always a hot topic, right? Sales and marketing working together, blah blah blah. How have you seen that evolve over the last 10 years? If we think about the relationship, and maybe even with you and your clients, and are you talking to more sales leaders, or are you seeing your companies think more comprehensively?
Most of our interactions are more focused on the marketing end, but a couple of things that I see kind of in that future bucket is just machine learning, artificial intelligence playing a bigger role in creating these user experiences, all the way from the through the sales funnel, right? And with this user experience and behavior data becoming richer and algorithms becoming more complex, I feel like the effectiveness of those personalized experiences, kind of like what you said earlier, right? Like where they already knew what you wanted. Like you went in there, and I feel like there's tools like that where the efficiency of those things will increase. The other thing that I'm interested on, and I haven't thought about it too deeply, but this whole metaverse thing and B2B, right? And if you accept the concept that B2B marketing needs to be about people, at some point, these people are going to be in the metaverse, right? Especially the younger generation.
Yes.
Yeah, especially the younger generation who probably in a few short years are going to be the ones doing the purchasing decisions on these B2B solutions, right?
Oh, man.
I could totally see, demos, trade shows, support, sales, marketing, websites, like all being over there. So that's kind of interesting. I want to dive more deeper into it. But,
we just started messing with it, Steve. I'm with you 100%. Let me ask you this. What's more interesting? You staring into a green dot of death on your camera, right? And then having to look at a camera, look at people, static, 2D, or I put on my Oculus and you're sitting next to me. If you don't think that is 1000% where we're headed. I mean, to me, it's it is very clear that digital sales over the next 5 years, what'll happen. Let's say somebody doesn't have one. I'll ship it to you. I'll ship you an Oculus. By the way, just so you know, that's the one thing I asked for Christmas was an Oculus. It's amazing. If you guys,
that was our present to all our employees this year.
Oh, so good. That's a good idea.
We got every single one of them an Oculus. Part of it because they all wanted it, but the other part of it is for us to start
exactly, man. Things, right? I'm with you. And so we also started an app called Gather. Now we started playing with it, right? Because what I think a lot of people, and I know you talk a lot about employee engagement too in a remote environment. What the metaverse may help to solve, and not necessarily the virtual meeting, but these tools are you've got your little avatar. What they may help to solve is the gap that we have now around serendipity in a remote environment where, I can just kind of toggle and walk over to your desk or where you're sitting. And if you're not on a call, it just fires up a Zoom. It just fires it up, it just both sides. And so we're going to start exploring that more in Q2. We did some tests internally. And again, it's kind of a new concept. We're so trained in this asynchronous communication, Slack, email, boom, 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 that we've got to fit. It's the combo, right, that we had in the office of serendipity plus asynchronous. And I think the metaverse is the solution to that. And I think it's something we're going to invest in virtual office in the metaverse 100% we'll do it this year. And, think about how we do that. And then we're thinking about with customers. Send them a link. Don't join me on Zoom. Go meet me here. We're thinking about communities, right? What about user groups in a metaverse?
We used to do a lot of workshops with our clients, and they were all face-to-face before the pandemic. And, obviously that all changed to Zoom or whatever it is now. But one thing we truly miss is that you don't get the emotional factor of being face-to-face with someone. So there's that human interaction that's missing through this whole Zoom screen experience. But the other bad part of it is the attention span on Zoom.
Oh, man.
Like, people can be doing a ton of other shit while they're on this call, where I feel like at least that the virtual experience is going to, you're immersed in there, right? Like, you have no choice but to pay attention to that experience or the whatever that is. So I think it's definitely interesting.
I agree. We talked to teams. We did a workshop earlier this week, and I remember one of the points someone brought up was, half of sales job today is just to keep people off of email. It's like to try to keep that attention span. So look, as we wrap up, Steve, what are, for the business, for yourself personally, what are some things that we've already been talking a little bit about trends. What are you personally excited for, 2022 and beyond? What's the business? What are some things that you guys are really excited about in the future?
I'm just excited to be still around, man. Like, one thing that was actually good is we made the Inc. 5000 list for the first time last year. And is it Inc. 5000? Yeah, fastest growing companies.
Awesome.
And it was nice to do that 20 plus years into the business. You see a lot of these companies that are first year and next year they grow 100%, next year, and then the following year they grow 100%, and they're ranked number 5 or 10 or whatever. But if you're in the business for 20 years and you're still able to keep your company going forward, that feels like you're doing something right, which feels good. So.
Right. And I think a lot of people see that and they're like, oh, why aren't I growing? It's like, it's not your path. You're in the wrong, it's like, it's not the path. There's nothing, nothing wrong with it.
So I'm just excited, man. I'm excited for our organization and growing and doing what we do.
Love it, man. All right. Well, look, I really enjoyed the conversation. I think there's some really cool things just kind of talking about, your path to entrepreneurship and, some of the dialogue we're having around, the future of marketing and what brands are doing that I think, whether it's more tactically on the marketing piece or more, theoretical on the learnings and, kind of your path and journey, I think people are going to have a lot of takeaways, man. So Steve, really appreciate you joining us.
Hey, thanks, Jake.
All right, awesome. All right, well, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the Jake Dunlap Show.
All right, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to another extremely fun and interesting episode. I thought it was fun and interesting, so I hope you did too, of the Jake Dunlap Show. Really great, just breaking down everything that makes people who they are, the success, the trials and errors, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite platform, and make sure, more than anything, to go over to jakedunlap.com. That's where you're going to stay up to date on all the latest guests, additional details, prep notes. We're going to be sharing everything on jakedunlap.com. So go ahead, go over there. You can subscribe there as well too, and we will see you next week on the Jake Dunlap Show.